Now, if you've never used serial at a low level, as in you don't actually understand the packet structure, then some of this isn't going to make a lot of sense. I'm going to try and explain this as best I can to make this understandable for everyone, rather than just those who've messed around with embedded systems. Alright, we have groups of options in the configuration menu. Some of these are a single option and some of these are one option. So let's start off with TC1 and TC0, which are terminating character controls. These decide what the line end character is. Now, going back to typewriters, there's a difference between a carriage return and a line feed. A typewriter might have a key such as index that would feed the paper one line, whereas the enter key would also be called return and would just return the carriage. Now, usually the carriage return would also feed the line once. So it's sort of common to do a carriage return line feed as a serial protocol as well, but you don't necessarily need to do that. In this case, I'm going to enable that just because I know it doesn't really matter, and for the explanation it makes sense. Next up, we have Em1 and Em0. Now, these are how you set the emulation modes for the terminal protocol. This changes the special characters that the terminal responds with to do specific things like move the cursor or react to arrow keys. Arrow keys were not initially in terminals, they were added later, and it wasn't until DT-100 became king that it was really standardized. This terminal does not emulate DT-100. So you have the four modes: Televideo 910, ADM5, ADDS25, and Hazeltine 1410. Now, from what I've experienced, ADDS25 and Hazeltine 1410 are nearly useless and are very poorly supported, so I wouldn't recommend trying those, meaning you're down to Televideo 910 and ADM5. Both of these have native support in Linux, so it's going to be easier to get them working, but they're still not perfect. Now, it's worth you trying both of these, and you just configure this by setting EM0 to 1 or 0 to change between those two. Go ahead and play with those and figure out which one works best for you, and I'll explain later why you might not even need to do that. Next, we have reverse video, which is just about the only thing that I can actually show a change here for. So any setting you want to change on this, after you've made a setting change, you hit enter. It'll ask you if you want to store it. Type Y, and then press Control-Shift-Escape again to exit. Reverse video is dumb, and I imagine this is only usable when you have a host that is sending out a reverse video and you want to unreverse it, because this is brutal to look at. I'm going to go ahead and disable that because I think it's dumb. Alrighty. Moving on, we have DTR, Data Terminal Ready, DSR, Data Set Ready, and DCD, Data Carrier Detect Select. The three of these options are all separate, but all related to hardware flow control, and it's going to depend on your serial interface, whether or not you would actually benefit from using them at all. Most of the time, you're going to be fine just disabling these. So unless you have a particular reason to use these, you likely will want to leave them disabled. Now, this next line is all about formatting the serial packets themselves. The standard serial packet format nowadays is 8 data bits, none parity, and 1 stop bit. Now, that stop bit is the first option on here. A 0 is 1 stop bit, and a 1 is 2 stop bits. The stop bits are just an indicator that that packet has been finished sending. The serial packet is always a set fixed length, and it just looks for that to know it's hit the end. Next is the odd or even parity, which we're actually not using when we're working in 8-bit mode. The parity is a form of error correction, but from what I've read in the manual, the DT-1 doesn't actually request the packet be sent again if there is an error. It just displays an @ symbol if there's a problem. The next option just enables the parity. You're probably going to have this disabled and have the WDL set to 0 as well, which sets it to the 8-bit word length. That is the number of data bits in the serial packet. The next 4 bits are for setting the baud rate. I'm using this at 9600 baud. This can go up to 19,200 baud, but I haven't found that to be all that reliable. I'm not sure if it's my serial adapter or the cables or whatever, but it just isn't working well for me. The last line are all settings that are local to the DT-1. These don't affect what is sent over serial at all. Honestly, I recommend leaving these completely disabled. The first one adds new lines when you press the line feed key. The second one wraps text, which is also going to add a new line. And then FH is full or half duplex, which means that when you type keys, you're going to see them appear whether or not the host sends them. Most hosts are going to support full duplex, which means that they're going to send your key presses back to you, which would result in double characters appearing when you typed. The last option is the only one that I would actually consider changing. You could change the way that your cursor looks using these options. Now it is a blinking underline. Personally, I prefer the blinking block, so I'm going to leave this at 0, and then I am done.